This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock has tips to protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report phishing, and update the software on your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, let LifeLock alert you to suspicious uses of your personal information. LifeLock also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. Stay smart, safe, and protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz March 27th, 2023. On the show today, news, listener questions, and surveys. Then in our main segment, it's the anniversary of the opening of the Walt Disney World Casting Center, designed by famous architect Robert A.M. Stern. And Jim tells us all about the relationship between Disney and two famous architects, Robert A.M. Stern and Michael Graves. Let's get started by bringing in the man who lost big at the horse races yesterday, and in the process discovered they're all much, much faster than he is. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well, Len, but I live on a country road where on this dirt road, for a time we had not one, but two horse farms, both of which raised Percherons. Are you familiar with these monumental horses?
No, are they bigger than Clydesdales?
Yes, actually, they are 17 hands tall. That's nearly 6 feet. 2,100 pounds. That's over a ton. And I remember taking Alice down when she was a little girl to go visit them, and I had her put an apple in the palm of her hand, which the horse inhaled. And at that moment, my daughter, which had been enthusiast of My Little Pony, immediately the needle got buried in the different direction, where it's all she could think of were horses that had those giant mouths and those enormous teeth. So one little girl's dreams got crushed that day by a giant horse. So,
on the other hand, it's cheaper now that you didn't have to buy her a horse or a pony.
This is true.
Do you know I was an adult when I realized that ponies and horses are two different things, that a pony is not a small horse, like a juvenile horse?
You're exposing a vast area of ignorance on my part as well.
Yeah.
For a time, I've always thought that, ponies were horses that got left out in the rain.
Like they're made out of cashmere, exactly, and they shrink.
Didn't bring the horses in. Now we got ponies.
Maybe we should start a podcast about animals, Jim, and all of the knowledge that we have about them.
People would really enjoy that 5-minute long show. Yes, please.
I was just saying, I think it'd be great. All right, Jim. Speaking of people, let's do a quick shout-out to subscribers over at DisneyDish.bandcamp.com. Thanks to new subscribers Laura Zuidema, Skip Potter, Vicky Fielding, and Jaden MC2189. And longtime subscribers Ian Sr., Go Ask Pink Alice, and John Kivas. Jim, these are the Disney cast members who live in the city apartments in the jackhammer scene of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. They say that the short commute and low rents make up for Jackhammer Pete's noise, and that the ice cream shop is really excellent. True story. I
had no idea that was even an option.
It's the housing market in both Orlando and Anaheim is very difficult. So you find places where you can, Jim.
All true.
All right, Jim, let's do the news. It's been a while. Folks, the Disney Dish News is brought to you by Storybook Destinations, trusted travel partner of the Disney Dish podcast. For a worry-free travel experience every time, book online at StorybookDestinations.com. All right, Jim, as we record today's show, our intrepid field reporter Christina is sitting down for lunch at Roundup Rodeo BBQ and will be texting us commentary as she goes through the menu. So I'll be providing those updates in real time throughout the show. In fact, the first update that Christina has sent is that, number one, they let you ride a horse going in to the restaurant, and I think this might be one of those. When they say horse, it might be like a mop that you straddle. I'm not entirely sure on that. The other little bit of information that Chrissy has given is that how, Jim, they list a series of like 6 different side items that you can have, and you get to choose any 4 of them. Well, apparently, if you ask nicely, they will give you all 6.
We seem to have stumbled on a horse theme this evening, so
exactly. And Jim, by the way, have you told our listeners where we've been for the last couple of weeks?
I have not. I've actually been saving this story for the show because looking back on the trip, it's hard to reconcile. We actually did that stuff.
We did a lot of things. So I've been gone for a couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, Jim and I were supposed to fly out. So this was like first week of March. Jim and I were supposed to fly out to Las Vegas, where we would meet with a friend and tour the different casinos on the Strip, looking at the architecture and the theming, and also make a side trip out to Omega Mart, which is an interactive sort of storytelling experience just off the Strip, and it's coming to Orlando, which is why it's interesting. So Jim actually, the day he was supposed to fly out, got snowed in and couldn't make it to Vegas.
It was a theme for this trip.
Weather was a theme for this trip. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the horses and snow, and in fact, I should have bought a sled. I get tripped up by a late winter storm, which meant that Len went solo to Vegas, and then I actually curtailed my trip to Las Vegas by to LA by a couple hours to try to get home to beat yet another snowstorm.
Yeah, so I ended up in Vegas, and because we weren't there together, I essentially stayed in the hotel room most of the time and worked on the next edition of the unofficial guide. But I did make it out to Omega Mart, which we will do an entire show on at some point. But let me just say, for folks who haven't heard of this before, it's kind of like if the Galactic Star Cruiser was a convenience store. So the idea is that you walk into the convenience store and there's a backstory that you have to discover. And there are clues at certain exhibits about what the backstory is and where you should go within the store to discover the rest of the story. The other thing about Omega Mart is that since it's a convenience store, they have to have products on the shelves. But they can't have real products on the shelves because it's not a real convenience store. So the artists who have created Omega Mart have come up with their own brands. So Jim, you are familiar with brands like Advil PM, right? Omega Mart has an item called Corn PM, which is if you needed a starchy grain late at night or to help you sleep, Corn PM. The other one that they have is Sensual Salt. It's for all of your savory after 6 p.m. needs. And you find these products by interacting with different things. So, for example, you know how like a lot of pharmacies and larger grocery stores have those automatic blood pressure machines where you stick your arm in a cuff and it closes and it'll tell you your blood pressure. They have one of those at Omega Mart, but instead of giving you the blood pressure, which is what it's supposed to do, it tells you what products you should buy. So it told me to go check out the Corn PM and the salt. And from there, where it's really interesting is you go into it's a convenience store, but it has a home and garden section. And again, this is a convenience store like the size of a very small 7-Eleven. But when you explore the small home and garden section, you discover a portal, a doorway to another dimension. And in this little convenience store, that door opens up into essentially a warehouse full of rooms where you discover the rest of the story for Omega Mart. So it took me, I was there for an hour and 45 minutes, did not even begin to understand the entire story. It is massive. We'll talk about it on another show, but you could easily spend 8 hours there. And Jim, the reason why I was interested in this was, as I was going through this, I was thinking to myself, if ever there was a thing that you could put right away into Disney Quest, it would be this. So we'll talk about it on another show, right?
Intriguing. Okay. Cool.
We eventually did meet up in California, where you picked me up at the Ontario, California airport. And we went from there to do a factory tour of the Garner Holt manufacturing facility. And Garner Holt, of course, makes all of the animatronics, or most of the animatronics, for Disney theme parks. And again, we're going to have to do an entire show on this. Garner actually said he will come on the show and talk about it. I don't want to give too much away. But that man has more theme park memorabilia than I think I've ever seen in one place outside of Disney.
I had been to Garner's previous headquarters, which is in San Bernardino.
And now he's in Redlands, yeah. But this is like 150,000 square feet of facility.
And we didn't even get to the facility across the street.
Right.
But yeah, you're not wrong. You know, Garner and Bill Turner, I want to say, very graciously spent more than an hour walking us through that facility. And there's a lot of stuff we can't talk about yet.
We'll have Garner on, and then he could talk about it. And this way, we will all be released from our NDAs. A couple of interesting things. Garner had showed us some of the animatronic features that they're working on, not necessarily for Disney, but just for the industry. And I think one of the most amazing things that I saw is the next generation of animatronic skin. Like, you would think that the skin is basically pink-looking plastic, but anyone who's ever looked at their own face, especially as they get older, in the mirror, realizes that your complexion is made up of not only like a uniform color skin, but it's dotted with little things. And Jim, we looked at, was it a wizard that he'd had? And I got as close to that wizard as I could, legally, right? And to look at the skin. And I thought to myself, this skin is what my skin looks like when I look at it up close. Like all the little blemishes and stuff like that, all the stuff that you see in your own skin was there in this animatronic. It had layers and depth to it. Like there wasn't just like one layer of skin. You could see that it was like an opaque layer with some modeling on it, then another opaque layer with different detail, then another opaque layer. It was amazing in skin.
I believe the term is subsurface scattering.
Right, yeah.
Crazy level of detail. I mean, there's genuinely some next-gen stuff going on inside of that building that, again, we can't talk about yet. But
yeah, and also Gardner's a huge theme park nerd and has a collection of Disney theme park memorabilia that is essentially unrivaled by anyone I know. Like, he has a Mike Fink keelboat.
He does.
in his warehouse.
Which is parked across from a Space Mountain car, which is parked across from a Matterhorn car, which is next to a Skybox. I mean, again,
there's a DeLorean in there. Yeah, it's just got some incredible stuff. It's really, really. So we'll have Gardner on.
Okay.
By the way, Chrissy has texted me to say that the plates that you get at Roundup Rodeo BBQ are ceramic or plastic, but designed to look like paper plates. So excellent tip there. Nice little nod to authenticity there. All right, so Jim, from Garner Holt, we drove about 10 miles, which takes about an hour and a half in California traffic, west, and we visited Universal Studios Hollywood, where we got to go into the new Super Nintendo world and also on The Secret Life of Pets. And we have an entire Bandcamp exclusive that we recorded with Disney Imagineer Jim Scholl about that experience. So that'll be out on Bandcamp soon.
Okay, and don't forget about Guy.
And Guy Selgo was there too, right? Our own Guy Selgo, which is great because Guy knows a lot about Universal Studios Hollywood and loves Nintendo. So it was great to have Guy there too. And then, Jim, the next day we got a tour of Disney Imagineering.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
And again, I want to stress here, folks, we went in through the front door. That this did
with the front door. Yeah, exactly. We got a legal Disney-approved version of Imagineering, and it was led by Disney Imagineer Bob Weiss. And we got a tour of the Marty Sklar archives as well. Which, again, I was thinking, do these people have any idea who they're letting through the front door?
To give you some idea of places we got into that we shouldn't have been at, we got into the workroom where they are still processing Marty's personal papers. In fact, as we stood there and Mr. Weiss was explaining, the work they were doing, that there were 4 archivists.
There were 4 archivists at tables flipping through stuff. Yeah. By the way, Jim, did you notice that when those archivists were flipping through papers from the Marty Sklar archives, there were a couple of different boxes into which they could categorize the documents. One of them was like, definitely scan this and preserve this, right? Another one was like, okay, this is important. We should save it. We don't know what we're going to do with it. We may not digitize it, but let's keep it in a box. And then there was a pile that was essentially burn as soon as you see this, right? It was a box that was like, dear God, under no circumstances should this document ever see the light of day, right?
Evidently, Marty would take home his papers every week. Everything that he worked on, he'd walk out the door with a box. The story that Bob basically told is that one day, again, Mr. Weiss at this point is the head of Imagineering and gets a call to the effect of, so what are we going to do about Marty's boxes? And it's like, what boxes? And what? They walk him out to a warehouse on the creative campus where inside of a chain link fence there are 1,000 boxes sitting there.
Yeah, inside the warehouse, Marty had started storing, or I guess the archives had started storing the boxes of documents that Marty had accumulated, and to demark the zone that was Marty's stuff, they had inside the warehouse installed a chain link fence and said, "Yeah, these are Marty's things." But the interesting thing was, Bob said he had called Marty's widow
Leah.
to say, hey, do you want any of these boxes? And her response was, dear God, no, but will you come and take the stuff that he's got in the attic? So there were more things so they're going through it. And the thing that I love is that they'd hired 4 full-time archivists and people with professional degrees in this who had tons of experience working for major organizations that on their archives, right? And they were so Bob is like, yeah, we think this is going to take a year. Yeah. And as soon as Bob said it was going to take a year, all 4 of them looked up like, by year you mean decade, right?
Yeah, they are still in the raw data gathering.
They're still trying to flip through to figure out what they have.
Right. And then supposedly they will digitize, but after we met with the 4 archivists, we got taken to, was just a preliminary display room of some of the...
Yeah. Oh, by the way, here's some stuff that we have. Oh, so wait, before we do that though, let me just say, we're in the room with the documents as the archivists are going through it. And they've got, around the perimeter of the room, they've got folding tables set up. And on each folding table is a set of boxes with some very rudimentary labels like Walt Disney World internal documentation, right? That's a set of boxes. And Jim, I'm sitting there and the very document on the top of that pile of boxes, they're not even in folders yet. It is literally, I'm going to take this document and I'm going to place it in this box.
Right.
Unorganized, just like that. This is literally the first level of categorization. But the first document that I see in the Walt Disney World internal communication is the brochure that Disney Imagineering had produced back in the early 1970s about extending the People Mover to the Disney Village Marketplace. And it was one of those documents, it looks like, when you buy a new car, it's like, your Chrysler 300 and you, right? This was that document. And and you and I have talked about it, right? That it was, we knew it was an idea. But to see the actual document that said, this is the idea and here's how we're going to do it, it was like getting confirmation of all of the stories that you had heard as rumors were not only true, but thought out way more than you could ever imagine.
These are literally a ream of paper boxes lined up, and there had to be 30 of them set up just around the perimeter of the room on the sort of plastic tables that you see in the church basement.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, we're going to have a potluck here when we're done with this. Yeah.
And again, you're walking by, and there is a 3-ring binder where it's just the label on the front of this is Marty's Conversations with Ray Bradbury, Volume 1. And it's and the whole time I'm sort of making eye contact with Len to the effect of distraction. Make a distraction.
Exactly right. Somebody pull a fire alarm. Yeah, exactly. I love that one of the documents that we looked at was the original pitch for Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
In the old sort of like onion skin typewriter, double-spaced font with red markups, from Marty where he's like changing ideas after it's been typed in. I'm like, do you know what people would pay for this?
This is the Disney equivalent of the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, that building full
really
of boxes that are full of treasures. And we are going to have to wait for them to catalog and decide what they have. And then, as Len just alluded to, what from this pile gets walked out. Because
that's the thing.
There were some stories Disney will love to share here, and there were other stories that they'll be renting space
we'll never see the light of day.
Right next to the nuclear waste. It's put these in there.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to know that.
Like I said, there were documents there where the pile was like, do not trash, comma, shred. And the word shred was in like 72-point font, italicized and red. And it was like a little asterisk next to it saying, and then encasing concrete and throw in volcano. Like never show this to anyone. The other funny thing was, we were talking to Bob as we were looking at the actual documents themselves. And they actually let us flip through a couple of them. And I was like, okay, it's going to take you a year to scan these documents. And, even if you've got like optical character recognition stuff, right? Everybody who's ever worked in a library or as an archivist knows that attaching metadata to the document, like being able to index the document based on the subject and identifying the keywords and the thing that the memo is talking about, right? Metadata is the hard part. So even if they could scan it in a year, the metadata is a 5 or 10 year project, right?
Easily. And because Marty himself, obviously, given he would take home a box of this stuff every week, was a collector/hoarder. But they were talking about how, for example, Marty saved drawings from John Hench. So there's this amazing catalog of early concepts for how Space Mountain would have looked. And do you remember the one of Tinkerbell dressed as a knight wielding a sword?
Yeah.
And, our first comment is, and nobody called Disney Consumer Products?
Like, Consumer Products would do this right now. Yeah.
So,
the stuff with the Hench things is like some of these are literally paper napkins that John does a sketch on during lunch, and that would probably fetch $5,000 right now.
And
if
Marty
if they were up for auction,
took it to his office, tossed it in a box, took it home, and here we are.
Yeah.
So
amazing. And then the next day we went to DCA, and the day after that to Disneyland, where we went on Web Slingers and the new Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. And Jim, we've actually got a Bandcamp exclusive that's going to be out like in the next couple of days about this, because you and I have already listened to it. Aaron's already got it produced, and that was a lot of fun, because again we toured with Disney Imagineer Jim Scholl, and so all of our listeners are theme park fans, right? So to our listeners, imagine if you were able to walk through a Disney theme park with the Imagineer who worked on that theme park, and you got to ask questions like, why is this here? Why did you put the curb here? Why does that sign say that? Why is this here instead of there? What were you thinking over here? And then get an answer for all of that.
In real time.
We basically did that for 2 days, which was, it's kind of great.
Now, mind you, it's happening and pouring down rain, and Len is in full Grand Inquisitor mode, and I'm in scribe mode, writing in the rain. So those are still drying out, Len. I'll get you those notes when the ink finally dries. So...
but it was amazing, and the walk around is really, really good. So that's coming out on Bandcamp very, very soon. By the way, a quick update from Chrissy, who says that the biscuits and red pepper jelly over at Roundup Rodeo BBQ are excellent. Also, that it is utter chaos inside, I guess, from the sound and the noise, and that your spouse is likely to divorce you if you insist on taking them there.
Oh, dear.
Good to know. Good to know.
Wow.
All right, Jim. On to the news. All right, Tron at the Magic Kingdom is in soft opening now, and that's well ahead of its official opening on April 4th. I note that virtual queue reservations for Tron are selling out in just under, Jim, how many seconds per day?
Oh, God. Less than 4, I've been told.
4, yeah. Between 3 and 4 seconds for all of the virtual queue reservations to go out. Also, if you really want to ride, individual Lightning Lane is just over $21 per person, including tax. So there's always that option there. Also, Jim, now that Tron is in soft opening, the walkway between Tomorrowland and Storybook Circus has reopened, which is good.
Oh, good to know.
Also, speaking of reopening, breakfast and lunch will return to Epcot's restaurant Akershus in the Norway Pavilion on May 14th with princesses. No pricing or menus yet. My guess is they're going to retain the family-style offerings that they're doing right now for dinner. Okay. Well,
that happy news for lots of parents at Epcot looking for things to do.
Exactly. While we're on the subject of character dining, there's a rumor going around that 1900 Park Fair's reopening should be announced soon as well, so let's look out for that.
Is there any info about the update of the lobby of the Grand Flo?
It's under construction now.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot going on at the Grand Floridian right now.
Okay.
Also, Jim, a former Disney Imagineer has posted to social media a set of images that show what the Mary Poppins ride would have looked like in Epcot's United Kingdom Pavilion. Have you seen this?
Yes, I have, and it's so nice this far after the fact to finally get confirmed that, well, first of all, that this ride was going to key off of not the original Mary Poppins film from '64, but rather Mary Poppins Returns.
Right.
And
it's essentially a teacup ride.
It is.
Indoors.
But the intriguing thing is that it keys off of the hand-drawn scene in the middle of the film with in fact, what's interesting is you are not riding in a teacup. You are riding in one of the Royal Doulton bowls. In fact, if you look at the overhead, you are inside of the bowl. You can actually see the cracks on the surface of the floor of this bowl, but we're looking at 18 little teacup-like bowls that would have swirled around inside the building.
Yeah, so a giant circle, just like the Mad Tea Party in the Magic Kingdom. You have a giant circle that rotates, and then within that there are 3 smaller circles. Each smaller circle has 6 bowls, and the bowls themselves spin, so it's circles within circles.
Yep.
A couple of interesting things here. One, it looks like the queue would have begun at the back right side of the UK Pavilion. So you know how like if you go deep inside the UK Pavilion, there's a little courtyard area, and then so in the back and to the right of that would have been the entrance to the queue. But I notice here, Jim, there are 2 pre-show rooms with, interesting.
Well, I think about it. First, you have to actually enter the house at 17 Cherry Tree Lane, and then you transition. If you remember, in the movie, you entered the kids' nursery and then were magically transported to the world of the Royal Dalton Bowl. So scene 1 is entering the house, scene 2 is the kids' bedroom, and then if you look to the back of the kids' bedroom, there's a portal sort of similar to Storytime with Belle, how you would then transition into the world of the Royal Dalton Bowl.
Ah, okay. That's what the 2 pre-show scenes are?
That's it, exactly.
Interesting.
It would have been a lovely addition, but the language that's being used online about this attraction, the postponed Mary Poppins attraction, but internally, what we're being told is just basically, it's not that it wasn't a bad idea, and certainly it would be lovely to have a more kid-friendly flat ride in that park, but frankly, Mary Poppins Returns didn't make enough money to, at this point, to quantify, build, this sort of investment in the UK.
Right. That's the thing. There wasn't enough interest in the movie to commit the time and the money to do it.
But it does look charming.
And then speaking of concept art, Disney has also released a visual of the scene inside the first drop of Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Have you seen this?
Yes. And if you'll notice the band, again, we have a Tiana figure, we have a Lewis figure, and then we have a band.
Right. So we're looking at the ride from behind one of the logs, and it looks like there's 8 people in a log. We've got the water stream in which the log is floating. On the right-hand side of that stream is Tiana in a suit. On the left in the foreground is the alligator, and then sort of behind that is a small dock for boats, and you've got a bunch of animals playing music there.
Yeah, and we're not looking at a bunch of figures that are recycled from Splash Mountain or American.
I was going to make this point. These are not animatronics from Splash Mountain.
They are not, and part of that is because Disney at this point has made the decision to go forward with strictly electrical animatronics going forward. And in fact, you have to remember that a lot of the figures that are in both splashes, actually 3 if we're counting Tokyo,
right?
They're hydraulically driven. And these are brand new figures, and they are all electric.
Well, the good thing about that, too, is electric will be more reliable, right? Because if you're using hydraulics, hydraulics spring leaks. And need to be refilled from time to time, but electric should be more reliable. So that's good. Because I know one of the issues that was always present with Splash Mountain was that a number of the important effects didn't work all the time.
Yeah. So hopefully this will resolve that. That said, I still am a little concerned because this is still a water-based ride, and when you're using all electric in an environment like this where boats are going by all the time,
humidity.
And a lot of moisture in the air. Long story short, this might be a good attraction to view during the first 3 months. I'm just saying. Okay.
I think it'll be fine. I mean, they can waterproof electronics, right? You can coat them in paraffin and stuff like that.
Okay.
So,
all right.
We'll see. I'm convinced that they could do it. All right. Last little bit of news. Disney's testing a 30% discount for DVC members at the Galactic Star Cruiser in August. I think this is a sign that more discounts are coming, and I'd be surprised, frankly, Jim, if 30% is the number that gets people to go. It's still around $3,500, which is a lot of money for 2 days.
It is. So, still very much looking forward to our experience with it in the coming week. So,
but it should be fun. All right, Jim, let's do a quick survey. Our friend Lauren sends in a survey that she got after a stay at the Polynesian Villas. And there are 2 interesting questions here, Jim. The first one is, why didn't you use minivans? List all of the reasons why. And a couple of them are fairly obvious. It's too expensive, I didn't need them, and party size. And the reason why I say that too expensive is one of them. We've been looking at the fares, the cost of getting around Walt Disney World using a minivan and using Lyft, which is, again, the service that Disney's using to schedule the minivans. And it turns out that minivans are about 3 times more expensive to get from point to point than a regular Lyft ride.
Wow.
And so the question is why, if you know that, why would you ever use a minivan? Right? And we're talking the difference between like a $12 ride from like Pop Century to Fort Wilderness, right? $12 using regular Lyft versus $36 for the same ride. And I'm trying to figure out the reason why anyone would pay 3 times as much for the same service to the same place. It's baffling.
Wow.
The second one was, second interesting question was, which amenities at Disney's Polynesian villas were you not able to use at the level you expected? And this is everything from like the pool to lounge chairs in the pool to the marina to arcade to housekeeping to movies and so on. Really interesting thing there because I think, Jim, here, Disney's trying to figure out if we have a limited supply of staff to do these things in the hotel, where would we prioritize those things?
Okay.
Right? Like, is housekeeping more important than movies under the stars? I would love to see the inside of those results.
This is the Poly, of course, we're talking about here. And hasn't construction of the DVC next door gone vertical?
Oh, yeah. It just went vertical. It looks like they're putting up, it's either the one of the internal stairwells or one of the elevator shafts, because typically one of the things that goes vertical first is either one of those.
Okay.
Right? They're the and they, I think they're 3 or 4 stories up on it right now. Yeah.
Okay, because what's kind of interesting about this sort of construction at Disney is you don't get the normal construction complaints because, frankly, 90% of the guests are in the park. You do get some folks who are perhaps poolside or out on the veranda at Trader Sam's and that sort of thing that might be impacted by the noise. But just kind of intrigued that a mention of that showed up in the survey.
The thing that I'm interested in seeing isn't at the Poly, but what's the feedback of guests at the Grand Floridian Wedding Pavilion and the Grand Floridian Villas for all the construction noise? Like, you know that sometimes when you're doing construction and you have to sink steel into the ground for foundations, you're getting that like bing, bing, bing. Like, does the construction team know that, you know, Sam and Lisa have a wedding scheduled for 1 p.m. on Thursday and not to keep doing that? I'm sure they do, right?
You would hope that there's an ongoing conversation between the folks at the Wedding Pavilion and the Poly DVC.
Because you would think that the construction crew knows exactly what's going on at the Wedding Pavilion, to the point where I would expect, if I got married at the Wedding Pavilion, I would expect to see a bouquet of flowers that says, Teamsters Local 531 wishes you and your bride the very best of luck. Like, I'm sure that's the level of detail that Disney's at this point. Yeah.
Wow. If that's not going on, that somebody should take the...
It should. It totally should. It totally should.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Last thing that Lauren mentions is that there was a series of questions at the end of the survey asking how many times you experienced different things in Walt Disney World. For example, early theme park entry, extended evening theme park hours, the first ability to purchase and schedule Lightning Lane attractions, and dining reservations, and so on. And I know that folks from Consumer Insights at Disney listen to our podcast. Lauren's point here was that when asked for the number of times you used these services, you weren't allowed to answer 0 for any of those questions. The minimum number that you could give is 1. So probably throw off the results of those surveys. Maybe it's time to get that question fixed.
We've talked about this in earlier surveys, and it just kind of kills me that Disney, in these sorts of situations, isn't getting real data.
Yeah.
They're hampered by the way these questions are set up. And it's like, it's important to know that I wasn't able to use that at all.
And that's the thing, too, because, if these results, if the minimum number is 1, you're really not learning anything.
No. It's like, and if anything, you're placating the folks in management. They got to use it once. Don't worry about it.
Everyone's using it at least once, right? Yeah, fair enough. All right, folks, that's going to do it for the news. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim tells us about Disney's collaborations with architects Michael Graves and Robert A.M. Stern. We'll be right back.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
What I bought? A new Blink Mini 2K Plus smart security camera. What I got? 2K clarity sharp enough to see every detail of home when I'm away. Plus audio like I'm in the room, not with my bestie traveling to another city. Plus easy plug-in setup to install faster than skipping through podcast ads. But you'd never skip ads, right? Plus, I got all of this for just $49.99. Blink Mini 2K Plus. Mini camera, max performance. Shop now at amazon.com/blink.
The detective said missing kids usually come home. What happens when they don't?
Based on a true story.
Police looking for John Gacy.
We discovered bodies. By the looks of it, they're younger men. The things he did to those kids. He's sick.
The system failed these families.
Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
Do you know how many there are?
Up to you to find out.
We mentioned at the beginning of the show that this is the anniversary of the opening of the Walt Disney World Casting Center.
Yes.
Which was designed by Robert A.M. Stern.
We kind of used that as the opportunity to back into this story. But before we do that, Len, I wanted to make you aware of a real estate opportunity. A 5-acre parcel has recently become available in Malibu.
Oh, okay.
Lovely site, overlooks the Atlantic Ocean, currently owned by Michael and Jane Eisner, and was listed in May of last year for the entirely reasonable $225 million.
A 5 acres, $225 million. So $46.25 million per acre.
What's important to understand here is that the Eisner family started out with just one parcel in this neighborhood in Malibu, but over time has acquired the 4 parcels to either side of the expanding out to this now 5-acre, 9-building, 16-bedroom complex, which has been described as village-like, completed construction in 2020, and most importantly, Michael Eisner insisted that this complex be designed by Robert A.M. Stern. And
really? Okay.
What's kind of interesting is why Michael, who, by the way, is 81 now, and Jane have decided to put this on the market, and it's largely to simplify their lives. They're letting their Malibu compound go, but they're hanging on to their Spruce Lodge home up in Colorado, also designed by Robert A.M. Stern, which has been,
of course,
described as a huge hotel-like estate, a log lodge built on a stone foundation, which combines the rustic forms of an Adirondack camp with a Rocky Mountain ranch.
I love the idea, Jim, that you can just call up Robert A.M. Stern and say, I'm looking for something lodge-like. Can you throw some things together? And Robert A.M. Stern would do it.
Eisner clearly loved what Stern did. Not just one, but 2 homes. Also, this is a guy who did a lot of work for Disney. Now face it, as you look at the Disney World, Disneyland, you can see a lot of work, or for that matter, Disneyland Paris, a lot of work by Michael Graves, some lovely hotels by Peter Dominic. We even have the Arata Azuzaki Team Disney Orlando building, which has been described as a nuclear plant. Only one of these architects was offered a seat on the Disney board, and that was Robert A.M. Stern.
Really? I didn't know that.
You know, and this all dates back to Michael Eisner's flirtation with being an architecture patron. And that really slides all the way back to Michael coming through the door as the new head of Disney in late September of '84. And one of the things that Michael inherited as he came through the door at Disney was a handshake deal that the previous management team had made with Tishman Realty and Construction. These are the guys who did most of the heavy lifting construction-wise on Epcot Center in the early 80s. And because, Len, they actually managed to get this 305-acre complex. And by the way, that's twice the size of the Magic Kingdom. They managed to deliver it for the fall of 1982. So, we can do it. We did it.
Yep.
Disney World agreed to give Tishman Realty and Construction the right to build a convention center along with a convention hotel anywhere they liked on Disney World property.
Wow.
That's a pretty decent carrot to get people to complete.
How big could they make these hotels? Like, is this like, you can have 500 rooms or?
If you go over the press accounts, they had the right to ultimately build upwards of 20,000 moderately priced hotel rooms that were directly linked to this convention center. So,
really? I mean, to put that in perspective, there's only like 28,000 hotel rooms in Walt Disney World right now. So that's a chunk.
Well, but this is the thing. The idea was they wanted to turn Disney into the go-to place for giant conventions. And we're talking things like, the Republican or the Democratic National Convention. I mean, some...
Right. McDonald's.
That's exactly.
Right, more than 100,000.
These absolutely giant things. Though, did you see the story that broke just yesterday about the large LGBTQ convention that is committed to Walt Disney World property for 2 years in a row coming up?
Yep, saw it. Excellent news.
That's going to be kind of interesting to see how certain politicians react to that. Anyway, getting back to the Tishman story. Michael Eisner came through the door, saw and heard about this handshake deal and said, yeah, that's the previous management team.
Yeah.
I could maybe get better terms out of Marriott. And so they open. Again, they recognize, in fact, we've talked about this. The Bass brothers were after Michael Root from the get-go to add more hotels on property, and certainly having a giant convention facility made sense as well. So Michael begins having conversation with Marriott. Tishman gets word of this February of 1986. They sued the Walt Disney Company for $1.3 billion.
Yeah, which back in 1988 was a lot of money.
There we go. But Michael isn't necessarily upset that Tishman has filed this lawsuit because, frankly, he's seen Marriott's presentation of what they wanted to build on Disney property for, this giant convention facility. And Michael reportedly referred to it as, it looks like a bunch of refrigerator boxes.
Yeah, not what you want when it's sitting right next to Epcot, right?
But see, that's the thing. Michael, at this point, has come through the door, and it's been about 18 months at this point. And he's forming a vision for Disney going forward. It's like, look, we're an entertainment company. And so the buildings we build should be entertaining. You should know right from the get-go, when you come on Disney property, it's like, okay, I'm at Disney.
That looks like fun, yeah.
In January of 1988, after numerous lawyers clashing and briefs being filed and this sort of thing, Disney comes to a settlement with Tishman Realty. The hotel, convention center, convention hotel project will move forward. However, Michael's new condition is that they have to use an architect that he approves of. And in this case, that is Michael Graves. He's sort of called the father of postmodernism architecture.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like when you look at any sort of retrospective of postmodern architecture, Graves stuff comes up all the time. Yeah. And in fact, the two hotels you're going to talk about are examples that are given of postmodern architecture.
What Len is referring to here, of course, is the Dolphin and the Swan. And prior to the Dolphin and the Swan, Michael Graves had never designed a hotel before. There's a lot of folks who tell you, looking at the Dolphin and Swan, it's pretty obvious. He never did.
Yeah, you don't say. Okay. How about that?
But Eisner is still solidly in Graves' corner at this time because Michael Graves, not Eisner, had come up with the design for the Team Disney building in Burbank building.
In Burbank,
the company's corporate headquarters in the Disney lot. And when this project was its initial design phase, Eisner reportedly turned to Graves and said, look, when I come into work each morning and I go up to my office, I will probably have very little to smile about. But do something with this building that will make me smile whenever I arrive. So Graves goes off, does some research, and finds out that the land that the Burbank lot stands on had been purchased back in August of 1938 with the money that had been generated by the enormous success of the company's very first full-length animated feature, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, premiered in December of 1937.
Okay, I think I know where you're going with this.
Okay, so that's the thing. So since Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs were literally the foundation of the studio in Burbank, Graves decides, okay, let's have the Team Disney Burbank building pay tribute to that very same film by having the Seven Dwarves themselves serve as caryatids for the structure. And I use the term caryatid because those are sculpted figures that serve as an architectural support, take the place of a pillar.
Yeah, they're basically columns in the shapes of dwarves that are holding up the roof.
All right, so in this case, the team did this move. These are 19-foot tall dwarves. Which again, jumbo shrimp, military intelligence.
Jumbo shrimp, exactly. Irony is not lost on Robert A.M. Stern. But Jim, I love the idea because in the language of storytelling, having 19-foot tall characters on a building is what we call foreshadowing.
There we go.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so team building, Disney Burbank building gets done in 1990, and it does in fact make Michael Eisner smile, which is more than you can say about Walt Disney World's Dolphin and the Swan. When this project was completed, they did finally get an on-site convention center of size, and by that I mean bigger than the convention facilities that were already in place over at the Contemporary. Also got an attached hotel facility, but the look of the two structures, we start with the Swan with its 12-story tall rectangular central building, and its two 7-story wings, which is then connected by a walkway to the 26-story tall triangular Dolphin.
And that's the thing; it's a triangle at the middle.
Yeah.
The other super interesting thing about the Swan and Dolphin, and you go back to the fact that Graves had never done a hotel before. If you try and characterize how to get from the lobby to different arms of the to rooms in different arms of this resort, and then you try and describe the views from those rooms, it's literally all over the place.
In fact, I have often felt bad for you with your unofficial guide hat. If you're staying over in the Dolphin and have to get over to the Swan to the convention facilities there.
Yeah, like if you're up in one of the rooms in a far corner in one of the arms coming off the main building, and you have to tell people how to get there, it's like just pull up Google Maps. It's gonna be easier to do that. Yeah.
When it comes to actually getting people over to the actual convention facility, if it weren't for the fact that hotel employs a Minotaur, I think a lot of folks would not be able to make it out of that building.
No, you'd never make it over there. No, you'd never do it.
If you think about what we were talking with the Marriott, upwards of 20,000 rooms, the fact that combined, the 758-room Swan, which opens in January of 1990, and then the Dolphin with its 1,509 rooms.
2,200, 2,300-ish.
2,200, 2,300, and
it's basically 10% of what they could have built.
Yeah, and what fascinates me is that when you think about how big they were originally supposed to go, in comparison to the Marion project, when you think about how long it took to get the reserve built there.
Right, because that just opened in, 2021?
That's it exactly.
The other thing is that if you look at the reserve, it is essentially the refrigerator style of hotel architecture that Eisner did not want to put in next to Epcot.
Worth noting that Michael Eisner not in charge of the company when that one went forward.
Also, it's a Marriott. Also, so that means the things that Eisner didn't want.
So that this story bends back in on itself. I love that.
But Jim, you had mentioned when we were talking before that Graves apparently had a backstory.
Oh God.
For the Swan and Dolphin, and I didn't know this. Why don't you tell the listeners what it is?
The story that Michael Graves came up for the hotel is the Dolphin was actually a tropical island that had been formed by a sudden cataclysmic event, this upheaval of an underwater volcano or an earthquake. And when the island emerged from the sea, it lifted dolphins out of the water, and that's why there are dolphins in the roof.
Oh,
okay. Now, a mountain then struggles to thrust its way up through the tropical jungle, and this is why you have the giant banana leaves painted on the side of the building to suggest a tropical forest. Now, meanwhile, across the way, this struggle forces the heart of the mountain to explode, and water cascades down 9 stories from the sides of the hotel into the 5 clamshell basins to form a fountain, which then, settled into Crescent Lake, and the water splashes across the way on the Swan, and that accounts for the waves that are painted on the side of that hotel. So, did you get any of that standing in front of that building?
Jim, what this story illustrates to me is how prevalent the 3 martini lunch must have been in the late 1980s as Michael Graves was designing this particular hotel. I mean, I get it. I'm going to have to go back now and walk through the outside of the buildings to get this. I sort of get it as an idea. I would love to see the brochure that pitched this to Disney as well.
There was a moment that Michael Eisner stood in front of a model of these 2 hotels and signed off on it. But what was kind of interesting is one thing to have a model in a conference room. It's quite another to be standing inside of, for example, the still under construction Disney MGM and watch the Dolphin and Swan start to loom up and
see the helicopters putting these 40-foot tall dolphins on top of that.
And particularly the notion of the visual intrusion that was happening over at Epcot.
Yeah.
The Imagineers who had worked so carefully to create this sense of scale and intimacy and the sense of you really are in the UK or you really are in France when you're over there wandering in that corner of World Showcase. And to have that, suddenly have people flood the story because they can see, to give you some idea of how these were greeted, these 2 hotels were greeted on property as they were being constructed. The Dolphin and the Swan by cast members were referred to as the turkey and the tuna.
Well, yeah, because, when Epcot was designed, it wasn't designed with these hotels in mind. So once the hotels started being constructed, the Imagineers had to go back and say, okay, how do we block the view of these hotels from inside Epcot? Imagineer Craig McNair Wilson had what he thought would be a elegant solution to this problem. It's just, look, all you need to do is put the animal for each country on top of the World Showcase Pavilion. You put a giant eagle on the American Adventure.
There we go. And it's a theme. Now, it was the Dolphin and the Swan that got Michael Eisner excited about making big architectural statements at Walt Disney World. But again, it was when they actually began to rise up out of the ground that gave Michael pause. Don't get me.
But that didn't stop him from using Graves on other stuff.
Well, no. He did the post office at Celebration. Was intimately involved in the early design of that project. Likewise, he did the Hotel New York at Disneyland Paris, which, by the way, has been recently rethemed, reimagined as the Hotel New York Art of Marvel. But it came to Walt Disney World and entertainment architecture. Eisner now embraced another vision, one that largely flowed off of the design table of one Robert A.M. Stern. And when we get to the second installment of the series, folks, which will be next week, we're going to talk about the many structures that Mr. Stern did for the Walt Disney World Resort in the 1990s. In fact, what fascinates me, Len, is if we start at the casting center and then, start to head, is it west on Buena Vista Drive? If you think about the boardwalk, the Yacht and Beach Club.
West, yeah.
I mean, there's this great concentration of Stern's vision.
And it's right next to the Graves, Swan, and Dolphin. So, we'll talk about that because it's 2 completely different views of architecture.
But again, fascinating story. Can't wait to get to it.
It was funny that you mentioned the post office in Celebration because I live a block, from that post office. And the first time I saw the post office, honest to God, my first thought was, did Michael Graves design a post office? Like, it's so iconic. Like, if you know what to look for his architecture. And for me, the thing that I was thinking of the first time I saw it was, remember he designed a line of tea kettles for Target? Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, the first thing I think of when I look at this post office is the Michael Graves Mickey Mouse teapot for Target. My God, did Michael Graves ever design a post office? And then sure enough it was.
You have to wonder, Glenn, how many people I'm here, sending in my tax bill. Why am I suddenly thirsty? I don't understand.
Yeah, did we want some Earl Grey? Like, I would go for it. Yeah. But it was funny that you're looking at that and going, only one school of architecture could have designed this building, and that's Michael Graves. Yeah, it was kind of great. Awesome. Well, good talk, Jim.
Same thing.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show and Jim Hill Media by subscribing over at DisneyDish.bandcamp.com, where you'll find exclusive shows never before heard on iTunes. Like I said, Jim and I just recorded 2 exclusive shows in Disneyland and Universal Studios with Jim Scholl. Until recently, Jim was Executive Creative Director at Walt Disney Imagineering, so you can imagine what it was like for Jim and I to walk through a park with him. If you want to hear me say, Jim, what were you thinking here, for 2 hours? Subscribe over at DisneyDish.bandcamp.com. On next week's show, we're going to finish up the story of Disney's collaboration with architects Michael Graves and Robert A.M. Stern. You can find more of Jim at JimHillMedia.com and more of me, Len at TouringPlans.com. We're produced fabulously by Aaron Adams, who'll be demonstrating traditional glass blowing, including his award-winning techniques for marvering and troweling, at the 2023 Eastern Shore Sea Glass and Coastal Arts Festival at 10 a.m. on Saturday, April 22nd, 2023, at the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum on North Talbot Street in beautiful downtown St. Michaels, Maryland. While Aaron's doing that, please go into iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.